All right, everybody. So yeah, welcome to the January 2026 edition of the DuPage ROSC presentation series. So if you are unfamiliar with the presentation series, if this is your first time here, we started it a couple of years ago as an opportunity to kind of dig into a particular topic on the recovery continuum that maybe we didn't have as much time to dig into at our ROSC council meetings. So if you attend the ROSC council meetings, you know there's usually about like maybe 10 or 15 minutes per each little segment, which sometimes is just not enough time. So we started this as a way to take that time to do it. So glad to be back with y'all for the very first one of the year, and I'm glad to introduce our colleague for today's presentation, which is Blake Worman. So Blake's done a couple of presentations for us in the past. He always has some very, very interesting topics, and this month is no exception. He does a lot of peer recovery work for us at Serenity House, but he also does work through the ROSC programs and other stuff that we have here. So he does a lot of different things. Very, very smart guy, and I've been looking forward to this presentation for a while. So Blake, I'm going to go ahead, if I haven't already, I'm going to make you a co-host, and then I'm going to let you take it away.
Right.
It's all you.
Cool. Share my screen. All right. Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to learn about some over-the-counter drugs of abuse and some under-the-radar prescription drugs of abuse that might surprise you. There's a whole world of potent and problematic substances out there that you can pick up at any regular store. There's a lot of information to go over in this presentation, and hopefully we get to all of it, but if not, I will make the script and slides and references available for anyone who would like copies. So let's say that you want to get high, but you're new to town, you live in Kalispell, Montana, or you're in a treatment setting on probation, and you can't use the normal drugs of abuse. Well, you can go into any old pharmacy or store and walk out with opium, powerful stimulants, sedatives, or hallucinogenics. Some of these are well known in certain circles, and some of them are probably going to be new to you. These substances are are more popular among certain communities due to their low cost and their ease of access. Hopefully, after this presentation, you'll be aware of some of these avenues of abuse that you might not have been before, and that you'll be familiar enough with them to be able to identify signs of their use, and also have an idea of what goes into supporting someone through cessation. Let's begin with some learning objectives. Hopefully you'll develop an awareness of these substances and drugs of abuse that might otherwise have gone unnoticed, and developed an understanding of the key drug classes of concern, and this is particularly noteworthy in a treatment setting. Recognize the behavioral signs and evidence of their abuse. Develop an understanding of the risks and complications associated with long-term use, and formulate practical harm reduction strategies to counsel clients who use these medications and substances, including specific warnings about serious health risks. I'm going to begin with a drug that most of you are probably aware of, dextromethorphan, or DXM. I'm sure you've heard the phrase robotripping, which is a common slang term for the use of cough syrup containing this medication. This medication can not only be found in cough syrups like Robitussin, but in tablet form in cough medicines like Coristin and cold and cough. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because most of you are aware of it, but it might be new information to some of you. So the history of dextromethorphan is an interesting one. Its medical use began when, and I'm not joking here, the CIA and the US Navy were looking into formulating a new cough suppressant that could be sold over the counter to try and curb codeine abuse of the early 50s. After discovering its effectiveness, it was brought to market in the 60s, and while initially successful in providing a useful medication that appeared to lack the abuse potential of codeine preparations, there were some issues with it. It was not long until a suspicious surge in sales alerted the FDA of its abuse potential. It was briefly taken off market and reformulated in an effort to curb some of its non-medical use. The FDA also weighed in for a time on whether or not to make DXM a prescription-only medication. However, they ultimately decided against it, citing the lack of evidence that further regulation would curb the abuse. There are a few states that restrict its sale to minors or hold it behind the pharmacy counter, much like with pseudoephedrine. Uh, when taken in large doses, DXM produces effects that are somewhat similar to ketamine and PCP in that it is a dissociative, it's hallucinogenic, but it has effects that are distinct from both of those. Much like ketamine and PCP, it is an NMDA receptor antagonist and it exerts its effects through actions at those receptors. It can produce feelings of euphoria, dissociation, visual and auditory hallucinations, and mild stimulation. The effects will last 4 to 6 hours. Higher doses might last 8 or more. The drug is active in its own right, as well as through its major metabolites, dextrorphan or DXO. Due to its ubiquitous nature, it's a popular drug of abuse amongst teens and rural populations. Uh, However, many of the medicines that contain DXM also contain other medicines like antihistamines, acetaminophen, de and decongestants, all of which can cause adverse effects when taken in high doses. Um, it's a very popular drug of abuse, and it is discussed extensively online. Fortunately, with that, there are a lot of harm reduction guides where people have written up solid information about using this as safely as possible. It's a bit of a silver lining with it. A point of note here is that heavy users will report experiencing withdrawal symptoms similar to antidepressant discontinuation syndrome. They will experience things like nausea, depression, insomnia, anhedonia, sometimes brain zaps. It can last anywhere 7 to 10 days. Users also report that prolonged heavy use has lasting negative mental and emotional effects that can persist for weeks to months afterwards. And now we're going to get into some of the ones that you guys might not know about. We're going to talk about opioids now. These are opioids that can be purchased legally and over the counter in both brick and mortar stores and online with no issues. Over the last 2 decades, as the opioid epidemic has grown, awareness of these substances has grown commensurate with that, and naturally a correlated rise in adverse medical events and addiction. These substances are also discussed extensively online. You can go on Reddit, Discord, internet drug forums, and read a whole mess of discussions about them. Another silver lining is that, much like with DXM, with that level of exposure comes more exposure to educated professionals who are able to effectively communicate the associated risks with them. But there's also a lot of Wild West type of body chemistry experimentation that goes on with some of these. Now, believe it or not, it's possible to walk into grocery stores in the US and purchase products that contain opium. And naturally, it's not sold as such, but if you know what you're looking for, it's readily available. The traditional way this was done was by making a tea from dried poppy pods, the same poppy pods that are used in dried floral arrangements and crafts. And you can see I have a picture on the screen of an example of the dried arrangements as well as the pods for sale. Users will grind up 4 to 8 pods, sometimes more, depending upon the variety, and make a tea from them. The species of poppy that is used for this is Papaver somniferum, which is also known as the opium poppy or the breadseed poppy. In years past, you could find the dried pods at most arts and crafts stores, but as awareness of their abuse has risen, the open sale of them in physical stores is pretty rare these days. Once in a great while, you might see them, or you might find them in the winter arrangements that are put into planters out front of businesses, hospitals, and offices. No, you can't find them regularly in craft stores anymore. You can still find them online with a simple search in quantities that are ridiculous. The sale of these dried pods sort of exists in a legal gray area in that the DEA technically classifies the dried pods as poppy straw or the dried matter of the poppy plant, and they classify that as a Schedule II substance since they contain the alkaloids morphine and codeine, which could be extracted without too much fuss. However, the sale is generally tolerated as long as it's sold for decorative purposes and not marked for human consumption. Uh, because of that precarious legal status, online vendors are pretty strict about not allowing any discussion of their ingestion whatsoever. They sort of use coded language to get around that. They will say that they're viewing a flower arrangement or they're going to have a viewing later in the day. And any specific mention of their ingestion is moderated pretty heavily. The dried pods do command a bit of a premium over the next product that I'll show you, but they've almost become something of a luxury item. Most people aren't supporting their habit with dried pods be with the dried pods anymore because of their cost. Uh, One of the tricky bits with that is both with this and the next item that I'll go over is that there's not a reliable way to dose these. This is a natural product, and with that comes varying potencies from plant to plant, from one batch to the next, and it's very easy to overshoot the 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 mark on these. Every year, there's several deaths from them. If you weren't aware, the poppy seeds that you have in your spice cabinet are from the same plant that produces opium. When you go to the store, they will have two varieties of poppy seeds to purchase, washed and unwashed. Naturally, they don't tell you which is which, but there's ways to visually identify them. The unwashed seeds will have opium residue all over them that can be removed from them with little imagination required. Most of the larger brand name manufacturers will wash the seeds prior to packaging for sale. This removes all of the opium residue and any tiny bits of plant matter or dirt that got mixed in with the seeds during harvest and gives you a better product for cooking. The bulk producers, however, don't go through that extra step and expense. Some of the seeds online for sale will be specifically listed as unwashed, which is directly targeting a drug user. The next logical question to ask is, how does that opium get all over the seeds anyway? And it's when poppy seeds are harvested, the mechanized harvester will roll through the field, cutting down and shredding the plants to separate the seeds. On the previous slide, you can see the latex leaking out of the seed pods. That latex is present throughout the entire plant, and when the mechanized harvester rolls over it, it will shred everything, separate the seeds through a tiny screen, and in the process of that, that latex gets all over everything. Users will purchase up to 1 kilogram or more of the unwashed seeds and prepare them in a way that washes off all that residue into water, and then drink that opium-infused liquid. The risk here is that the potency of those is variable, and you can't reliably dose with it. You can sort of form an educated guess from the amounts of the product that you use and the bitterness of the tea. Alkaloids like morphine and codeine are both very bitter compounds, and that can give you a clue to its strength. but you don't have a reliable way to know the amount of morphine encoding that you're consuming. General advice online is to sip slowly over the course of an hour or two and gauge the effects over a long period of time. It's still very easy to overshoot that mark and find yourself in an overdose. Do most users heed that advice? I didn't. And as a result, every year there's multiple overdose deaths from drinking these teas in the US and even more around the world if you dig a little deeper. Once in a while, you'll catch a news story on an unfortunate death, and then there will be renewed calls to ban their sale. Uh, the effects of poppy tea are identical to oral morphine, but with a little bit of a longer half-life due to the other opium alkaloids in there competing for your body's metabolic pathways. Side note for those of you in a treatment setting, the use of this will show up on a regular 5-panel drug screen. Now, if you don't have access to either one of those, there's another powerful opioid that you can get from any US pharmacy, Imodium or loperamide. I'm sure a number of you were completely unaware that Imodium contains a powerful opioid. In certain circles, it's known as poor man's methadone and is used to treat opioid withdrawal symptoms. I can personally attest to its abilities here. It manages about 70% of the physical withdrawal symptoms, but does nothing for the mental aspect due to how it works in the body. But it will let you get through the workday. The drug itself acts only in the peripheral and the enteric nervous system and normally does not cross the blood-brain barrier. You might be wondering, why does Imodium contain a powerful opioid? As anyone who has been on opioid pain medication following surgery or an injury, the medication will make your intestines slow down drastically. And what is a negative side effect in one medication is the sought after quality in another one. Loperamide will bind to the opioid receptors in your enteric nervous system and slow everything down and will alleviate the symptoms that it treats. Now, normally that's the only place that loperamide will be active. Under most circumstances, it will not act on the central nervous system. The human body has a protein that will pump foreign substances out of your cells that it does not want in there, called P-glycoprotein or PGP. When loperamide is circulating through the body and attempts to cross into the cells of your central nervous system, PGP will say, nope, get out, and turn that molecule around and show it to the door. And if you did find a way to get it past the blood-brain barrier, there's the trouble of it having extensive first-pass metabolism. So the total amount circulating and available to act on your central nervous system receptors is limited in two ways. What's first-pass metabolism? You can kind of think of it like a security checkpoint for your body. When you take an oral medication, with a few exceptions, it usually doesn't go straight to where it's needed. It has to be vetted first. It will be absorbed by the stomach and the intestines, and then sent to the liver where it gets a once-over. Your liver is a bit like a bouncer and really doesn't want a lot of foreign substances going through your body, binding to this or that receptor. Your liver might say, okay, there's 100 of you, only 50 of you are getting through. The rest of you are going to be sent on your way, and it will convert the other part of the drug into inactive metabolites. Or it might even say that nobody's getting through, and that's why some medications aren't orally active. And it's also why there's a huge potency difference from oral medication to intravenous medication. Now, many drug users are too smart for their own good. There was some collective frustration with this readily available opioid that was right on the doorstep of being recreational and said, nope, this won't do. And they began to collectively work on ways to get loperamide to cross the blood-brain barrier. This was a huge topic of discussion on internet forums in the early 2000s, and everybody was dreaming of solving the puzzle of getting loperamide centrally acting. People were poring over research papers and looking for methods to get it across, and they did find some. there were a lot that were pretty out there, or at least beyond the means of the average person at first glance. There was one experiment that coated nanoparticles of a loperamide doped biocompatible polymer with polysorbate 80, and then injecting that into rats and running a standard analgesic test on it, showing that it was effective. But I remember reading at least one post where one person did that in their home kitchen laboratory and then injected it and posted about their results with it. Now, that's still beyond the reach or at least comfort with most people, and the idea of simply inhibiting the body's production of PGP and preventing the extensive first pass metabolism was thought to be the best way forward. There's a number of medications that will strongly inhibit the production of PGP and other common medications or foods, which will prevent your body from producing a metabolic enzyme called CYP3A4. That's an enzyme that's used extensively in the metabolism of a lot of medications and drugs. White grapefruit juice is one of the common substances that will alter the levels of that CYP enzyme in your body. And if you've ever seen a prescription bottle that has a warning label on it that says, do not take with grapefruit juice, this is why. Now, if you're wondering why modulating your body chemistry like that is problematic, I'll try to walk you through this as simply as I can. Let's say that you shut down production of PGP, so the loperamide can cross the blood-brain barrier. After that, you still have the CYP enzyme that is going to break down most of it before it ever reaches your central nervous system. So if you want to abuse it, you're going to have to take a larger dose to have any effect, which will increase the dangerous side effects that loperamide is known for. And I'll talk about those side effects in a minute here. So once you've stopped PGP from working, and you do this a few times, and you establish a rough baseline for the dose that you need, and you get comfortable with that, let's say that you start doing a little bit more reading, and you learn that you can also modulate the CYP enzyme, then you take your normal dose, and then you take a medication which will modulate CYP, and now you have a massive amount of a drug that is incredibly potent flowing through your system and has led to quite a few overdoses. Now, if you're someone who rightfully decides that all of that sounds dangerous and you're not with it, then the easiest and ironically the most dangerous way to get loperamide to cross the blood-brain barrier is to simply brute force it. Just take so much that you saturate and overwhelm your body's ability to pump it back out of your central nervous system. This method is particularly reckless for a few reasons. The first one is the sheer potency of loperamide. Its chemistry is something of a cross between fentanyl and diphenoxylate, which is a somewhat obscure opioid, but still really powerful. It was discovered by Paul Janssen at Johnson & Johnson during his research when he discovered fentanyl and all of the fentanyl analogs and other powerful opioids, and this was one of them that was within that group. Because it's normally peripherally acting only, there's no potency studies done in humans. So the LD50 is not something that has been established, let alone what normal dosing guidelines are. It's so potent that there are cases in the medical literature of people needing to be Narcaned after taking it and getting it to cross the blood-brain barrier. Another reason this is reckless is that there's no way to dose safely. There's not a clear-cut line of where the PGP saturation point is. Your body's biology isn't as much like a light switch as it is a dimmer switch. Someone can take a massive dose and overwhelm PGP, and then there's a whole bunch of a powerful opioid floating around your system, which can lead to an overdose. The second reason why this is dangerous is because once you start getting over 100 milligrams of loperamide, it starts to have a lot of cardiotoxic side effects, specifically prolonged QT intervals, fibrillation, often leading to torsades de pointes, which can lead to sudden cardiac death. You can find a whole mess of heartbreaking cases on PubMed of deaths due to loperamide abuse. As we move into this next category, I have to explain a little bit of chemistry. One of the drugs in this list is a specific isomer of a chiral molecule, And I'll try to make this as painless as possible. Now, what is a chiral molecule? Well, a chiral molecule is one that has two versions that are mirror images of one another. A good way to think about this is with your own hands. They're related, but not identical. You cannot superimpose your hands over one one another. There are chemicals which have that same property. And this handedness is crucial in biology, where sometimes only one hand fits into the receptors of your body. Sometimes one fits a little better than the other one and therefore has greater potency. Others might have no activity whatsoever. There's multiple types of isomers, but that's not really relevant. The quick vocab words are levorotatory is a left-handed molecule and dextrorotatory is a right-handed molecule. And you can see on the screen, there's two isomers of methamphetamine, and that will become relevant in a second here. With that quick lesson out of the way, we can get on to the stimulants. There are definitely some powerful stimulants that you can get over the counter, some being stronger than others, and some causing more harm than others. I'm going to start with the weakest one and work my way up to the stronger ones. All of these you can get over the counter from any grocery store pharmacy. The only one that you need to get from behind the pharmacist counter is ephedrine, and that's the weakest one. There's a common misconception that ephedrine was banned, but no, you actually only have to go to the pharmacy counter and ask them for it specifically. Ephedrine is an abusable medication, just like a lot of substances that share structural similarities with amphetamines. Large doses of ephedrine will produce amphetamine-like stimulatory effects, but it's known for its peripheral side effects and cardiac complications. There have been a very few, there have been a few high-profile deaths from its abuse, and that was the reason for its removal for, for its removal from inclusion in a lot of supplements. After ephedrine, methylhexanamine or DMAA is the next most potent stimulant. It's a nasal decongestant, and you'll notice a theme here with that. And it's a performance enhancing drug that was pulled off the market in the 80s after it was linked to some serious cardiac complications. It was reintroduced back into society in 2006 by Patrick Arnold following the ban on ephedrine containing supplements. And this is the same chemist that was producing steroids and pro hormones for the Major League Baseball players like Mark McGwire, and was part of that whole issue and scandal. On the slide, I have a picture of a 2D molecular structure of DMAA and amphetamine. You can see some of the similarities in that top backbone of the molecule. And while it's not a perfect analogy, you can think of that as sort of the shape of a key that fits a specific lock. Those two are similar enough that they have some shared pharmacological profiles. And the abuse of that drug has resulted in a number of deaths, as well as it being banned from supplements. However, you can still find it for sale online. The next stimulant on our list is methamphetamine. And yes, believe it or not, you can purchase methamphetamine over the counter from the pharmacy. No prescription needed. However, there's a caveat with that. The one that you can buy over the counter is the left-handed isomer of methamphetamine or levomethamphetamine. The stuff that you purchase on the street is often a race mixture, meaning that it has both isomers, or it might be strictly the right-handed dextrorotatory isomer. The right-handed isomer is the more euphoric and addictive one, and the left one, depending upon how you measure it, is anywhere from 3 to 15 times less potent and having a stronger side effect profile. Levomethamphetamine can be found in nasal decongestant inhalers, and you can see on the screen a picture of one of them. And if you look closely, you can see that in order to not advertise what the actual medication is, they sort of spell it in a little bit of an obtuse way. Users will break open the inhaler and then eat the cotton that's inside it containing the drug, or they will extract it and then eat, smoke, snort, or inject the isolated compound. The motivation to go through with all that trouble is because in addition to the active ingredient, the cotton inside will also be soaked in camphor, lavender oil, and menthol in an attempt to dissuade misuse of the drug, which is marginally effective. Those can all be nauseating compounds, and a good number of people who eat the whole cotton that way will have their stomachs revolt and send it back out. The effects of levometh are similar to methamphetamine, but less euphoric. It acts mainly as a norepinephrine releasing agent and is about 15 times less potent as a dopamine releasing agent than the right-handed isomer. This does limit its abuse potential to a degree, but by taking a large dose, such as one inhaler's worth, there are significant subjective effects that are similar to methamphetamine. It does have a lot more side effects like vasoconstriction, increased blood pressure, and it will raise your heart rate significantly. I was unable to find any instances in the literature of deaths or heart failure due to it, but all stimulants are cardiotoxic to some degree. The next one on our list is propylhexedrine. This is another drug that's found in nasal decongestant inhalers, only it's more abusable than the last one. These are sort of infamous among some drug users as they're incredibly potent, they're cheap, they're almost everywhere, and every time that I go to a pharmacy, I always look and see, and they're usually sold out or more than likely had them all stolen. The history of both propylhexedrine and levomethamphetamine are both a bit ironic, all things considered. Back in the 40s and 50s, nasal inhalers used to be filled with benzedrine, which was the brand name for a race-pick mixture of amphetamine. But due to the abuse with it, it was reformulated and they came out with these drugs, which still seem to be readily abusable. Uh, Unlike with levomethamphetamine, propylhexedrine is a dopamine releasing agent in addition to norepinephrine. This will increase the subjective effects of stimulation and euphoria, and the drug is used in the same way as the Vicks inhaler, with users eating or extracting the drugs from the cotton. I'll show you this next one. On the screen here, like this is a very popular drug. I have a screenshot of a harm reduction guide that I pulled from the Benzodrex subreddit. That subreddit is pretty active and they have quite a few guides on there that cover extractions, dosage equivalencies, all sorts of stuff. The general atmosphere on that subreddit seems to be like a mixed beat between active harm reduction and a lot of meme posting. Over the years, as I've read into the medical literature, there are reports of people converting the freebase drug in the inhaler into its hydrochloride salt and then trying to inject that. This results in all sorts of terrible health effects. I found 2 cases of brainstem dysfunction, 7 cases of transient diplopia or double vision. One patient had evidence of right intranuclear and it's a hard one, ophthalmoplegia, and another had depressed right gag reflex and paralysis of the tongue. Those effects lasted for months. And they're the lucky ones. There are dozens of recorded sudden deaths from the IV abuse of propylhexedrine. When they did the autopsy on them, these were users who had been using for a long time. They each had right ventricular hypertrophy, pulmonary edema, and foreign body granules on their heart. Stimulants are known for their cardiac stress in general, but purple hexadrine seems to have a well-documented cardiotoxic nature. In the discussions online, long-term users will talk about all of the health effects that they've encountered with its use. And now we're going to get into the original inspiration for this presentation, the deliriants. Abuse of these has some serious and lasting health effects. This classification, while informal, encompasses a group of medications, both available by prescription and over the counter, as well as certain plants whose active constituents share core pharmacological mechanisms. Uh, on this slide, I have some 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 pictures of the various plants and drugs that you can find them in, as well as a little bit of meme culture surrounding their use. The popularity of these has taken off in the last few years. I'm sure some of you might have heard of the Benadryl challenge on TikTok, where users will take a large amount of Benadryl and then document its effects. It seems to be very popular, mostly among young adults and teenagers. But there's a lot of people have who have become hub who have become habituated to this as well. One of the distinguishing traits in that drug is that they all produce intense, hardcore hallucinations that are impossible to distinguish from reality. Few substances have received as many severely negative recreational experience reports as they have. The experience they produce is so intense and bizarre that most people only try it once. That said, you can go online and see discussions from people who have developed a mental addiction to them, and will discuss the myriad difficulties that come with repeated use. The most popular one of these is Benadryl. The the Benadryl challenge from TikTok did result in a number of deaths. Benadryl, Unisom, Dramamine, to a lesser extent, hydroxyzine are all the most commonly abused medications in this group. They're all first-generation antihistamines. The newer antihistamines out there do not have these same recreational effects, but all of the first-gen ones do. These drugs all exert their action through stimulating the muscarinic acetylcholine receptors in the brain. The hallucinations they produce are cartoonishly intense, and they're the sort that people who have no familiarity with psychedelics imagine what taking LSD is like. There are prescription medications like scopolamine, atropine, and hyoscyamine, which have the same pharmacological action and can be found as the active constituents in the plants that we'll get to next. The hallucinations that users experience are hard and sometimes impossible to distinguish from reality. On the next slide, I'll show you a short clip made by a user of diphenhydramine that shows a bit of what the experience is like. The hallucinations are both auditory and visual. People will be smoking non-existent cigarettes, seeing spiders or insects crawling around everywhere, and seeing shadow people and dark entities. Much like with the discussion of stimulants online, there are some very active communities on Reddit and Discord that discuss the recreational use of them. With that discussion come self-reports of the complications that users experience. Chronic use, and especially at higher doses, is linked to a myriad of physical and psychological effects. Psychological addiction to the drug, cognitive decline, heart issues, memory issues, psychosis, partial vision and hearing loss, loss of motor function, depression, suicidal ideation, brain fog, and persistent persistent hallucination syndrome are all some of the serious effects that users will self-report. Um, due to its relative obscurity, organized research on diphenhydramine abuse is pretty limited, but there are a number of case reports you can find on PubMed detailing the accounts of people presenting with an addiction to it. There is a withdrawal there is a withdrawal set of symptoms that users will experience. And in PubMed, I I came across a few cases where people had to be titrated down off of their use over the course of 9 or 10 days. The long-term abuse of this is really problematic. There, the the issue with it is that down the road, um, users have a greatly increased risk of dementia and 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 Alzheimer's, and users online will self-report that they have noticed a sharp decline in their cognition from the long-term use of it. I think over the next 10 to 15 years, there's going to be a lot more information that comes out documenting that. We're getting a little short on time, so I'll show you this real quick. This is a video made by a user of diphenhydramine that shows what the hallucinations look like.
This is going to be a wonderful experience in consciousness.
You can see the shadow people. It's an incredibly intense experience. Most people only do it once, but there are users who seem to enjoy this and they become habituated to it. Just to save on time, this is a plant that can be found growing all across the US, and it has drugs in it that produce the same effects that the first generation antihistamines do. There's another one that we're gonna skip past. This one's not too problematic from a harm reduction standpoint, but you can pick up seeds from your local garden store that contain lysergic acid amide or LSA, and that is a precursor to LSD as well as being a psychoactive drug in its own right. It has a long history of use in Mesoamerica. They use it in a lot of their shamanic rituals. Now, we get to some of the more problematic ones again. You can find analogs to GHB online pretty easily. If you're not if you're not familiar with what GHB is, it is a powerful sedative that was popular and sold over the counter back in the 80s as a bodybuilding supplement. It gained notoriety as the date rape drug in the 90s after a DJ in LA used it to infamously assault several women, and it was banned after that. But you can find analogs and prodrugs to it on Amazon, eBay, different storefronts on the web. While GHB is a Schedule II medication and it's illegal to possess outside of being prescribed it, you can still readily find two prodrugs of it. One of them is 1,4-BDL, and the other is gamma-butyrolactone, or GBL. They produce effects that are somewhat like a cross between alcohol and MDMA. Users report euphoria, anxiolysis, increased appreciation for music and socialization, enhanced tactile sensation, and sed sedation. One of the curious things about GBL is that while it's a prodrug for GHB, it has a faster onset of action and an increased potency compared to it. You can find it sold as wheel cleaner, rim cleaner, graffiti remover, 3D printing additive. There's all sorts of code words that you can use to lo locate it. Another one is that it's sold as eyelash remover, and on the screen you can see that gel remover there. That's used to remove fake eyelashes, and there's a subtle nod to what's inside with the BL lashes up on top for butyrolactone. And now I wanted to get to this section as well. There's a number of prescription medications that are definitely abusable, but not super well known. Baclofen, gabapentin, and Lyrica are all very similar drugs, but they're all very abusable, and they all have the potential to give someone a nasty physical addiction. They're all GABAergic drugs like Xanax and like alcohol, so discontinuing them suddenly is a medically serious thing that needs medical intervention. On the screen, I also have a shot of modafinil. That is a stimulant medication. Uh, it's abusable just like the stimulants that I went over previously. Artane is something that is starting to become more well known. It was abused a lot during the Iraq War by soldiers, and it produces effects that are similar to to Benadryl and the other first generation antihistamines. And another one that we need to talk about is bupropion or Wellbutrin. This is one I'm hesitant to even bring up because it's a bit of a cognitohazard. It's still very little known outside of perhaps by some ER staff that have had to treat the horrific side effects, or corrections officers where that seems to be a popular drug. This is a drug that you can look at its chemical structure, have an idea of its pharmacology, and take a pretty good educated guess that if you were to inject it, it would provide you with an intense rush. And it does. It's a stimulant. It has all the classes, it has all of the classic effects of that class of drugs and all of the associated side effects with it. The problem with Wellbutrin is that it is known for lowering the seizure threshold, where it becomes very easy to trigger a seizure. All sorts of documented cases on that. It's also particularly hard on the body. When it's prepared into a liquid formulation for injection, it's a very caustic substance, and it's absolutely murder on the veins. People will also crush it and then insufflate it. It's one that you normally don't think of. It's readily it's readily dispensed from the doctor, and if you're in a treatment setting, it's not one that you would think that you had to pay attention to. And I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. There's a whole world of substances like this. Had to I had to temper a little bit of what I was going to cover in this because of just the sheer number of them. There's so much more that I could go over. If anyone wants the the information that I have on it, let me know. And let me stop
Yeah, I'll
sharing.
just say real quick, Blake, thanks for the presentation. That was awesome. I mean, it's kind of funny as you're going through them, and Blake and I talk about this stuff offline all the time because it's all stuff that we did. So like everything that we've talked about for the most part has been tried and tested at some point by folks on this call. And that was like the impetus for it, which is like, hey, there's all this stuff that's out there. We know about it, but like a lot of people don't know. And so I think sometimes when you tell them about like even things like the Benzodrex inhaler, like next time you go to a Walgreens, like the Walgreens by my house, it's always out of Benzodrex inhalers, like always. And my first thought is like, oh, I wonder if there's somebody around here that's that's like using those. That's just like where my brain goes sometimes when I see that stuff. But yeah, I'll open it up for yeah questions or comments. You can come off mute or you can raise your digital hand. But yeah, Ben, I see you.
Yeah, wow. Just fascinating. I love these presentation things with all the drugs that are used and found over the counter or just in your drugstore. And that's just chilling and wild and bad. Stuff I don't know anything at all about. But I have a question, Blake, about bupropion and Wellbutrin. Are those the same drug?
Yes, the
Okay.
Wellbutrin is the brand name, and bupropion is the generic name of the medication.
So what's the medical use for that? Is there a medical use for it?
Yes, it's an antidepressant, and I think it's like the third or fourth most commonly prescribed one.
Okay. I just remember when I worked in residential treatment that there was, when we gave out meds, that there were some guys who were using that drug, like with, through a nurse, right? That it was
Hmm.
prescribed for them. So it is an antidepressant.
Yes.
All right. I'm so sorry, man. So this is all like remembering, like, so poppy seed ingestion. Like, is there enough poppy seeds on any possible like bagel that would have you drop dirty for, pardon my bad language on how this, I'm an old school guy. Have you also would have you drop positive in a drug test?
Absolutely.
So they would. Okay. All right.
Yes.
So they weren't
Even
lying to me that they just ate a big encrusted bagel with poppy seeds and they,
mhm. You can go to Portillo's, have one hot dog, and then drop dirty 20 minutes later.
wow. All right. And I think I know the answer to this last question I have. And this is like the Hat Man. That's super
Yes.
creepy. And is that, I'm sorry, that was the deliriant
Hmm.
hallucination.
Yeah.
You
The
could make a
Hat Man
scary
is
movie out
something.
of that.
It's something of a shared hallucination among users of diphenhydramine. How much of that is intrinsic to the substance itself versus them just being exposed to it and then having that affect it, I don't know. But within the diphenhydramine use culture, it's a very popular meme and
That's crazy.
avenue of humor.
That's wild.
I'd say
And just,
also, Ben, what one other weird thing about the Hat Man is that you see him pop up also in sleep paralysis. It's a very common shared sleep paralysis theme. So yeah,
okay.
Hat Man goes beyond just Benadryl, but yeah, that he's like the number one like face of the meme with Benadryl abuse for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Benadryl, Dramamine, pretty common. Antihistamines. But my wife used to use Dramamine when we took car rides because she suffered from motion sickness. It's like,
Mhm.
wow, man, really? Anyway, fascinating. I love these presentations. Thank you so much.
Mhm. One of the sad parts about diphenhydramine use is that when I was researching this and I was on Reddit on the diphenhydramine sub, there are a number of heavy users on there who are self-reporting all sorts of cognitive deficits now, and they have this sort of fatalistic attitude that they've already suffered all of this damage, so what's the point of even stopping? And they're stuck in a cycle.
Any other questions or comments for Blake? I know there was at least one person who was interested in getting the slides. So I think also, yeah, if anyone here would like the slides, if you want to just put that into the chat just so we could see it, and then we can make sure to send it out to whoever wants it. Um, And then this recording will be up on the YouTube probably later today, and then you guys can share that as you see fit. Any other questions or comments for Blake? Going once, going twice. Blake, great job, buddy. As always, super, super in depth, very, very informative. And yeah, we'll have that up on the YouTube. If you or someone you know is interested in doing one of these presentation series, let us know. We're always looking for presenters, always looking for topics. And last little thing I'll promote. Annette, the Kane County ROSC is meeting tomorrow, correct? You want to do real quickly, give us a little heads up on that?
I'm sorry, it's a little loud in here. And I'm also wearing my headphones. But yes, tomorrow is our Kane County Ross meeting. It will be held at Elgin Community College. If you haven't received it yet, I did send out a reminder just a few minutes ago. It is from 3 to 4. We will be highlighting Elgin Community College's CRSS program. I hope to see you there.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. All right. Well, everybody have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.